this week's Prepping Data, we are taking a look at Matthew Armstrong's William Wordsworth Viz. So we basically have a couple of poems, different poems, and we want to know the Scrabble score of each word in that poem and sort of the total points per line, etc. and so forth. So I thought that'd be a really fun Viz to turn into a Prepping Data challenge because there must have been, a little bit of data prep that went into getting this data set. So if we have a look at the website that we took the poems from to start off with, then that is here, that's everypoet.com. And basically, if you're looking at how the data might be coming in, then this is kind of, if you right click and hit inspect, you can see the HTML and the CSS and the JavaScript sort of behind the web page, and that's what we basically bring down into Tableau Prep now. So if we have a look at that, then we've got each poem that we're looking at for this viz. We've got a row ID, which is just arbitrary, just kind of giving us the order of which we've scraped this data. And then we've got this download data, which is all the HTML and the poem lines and that sort of thing. So you can see that anything that's containing any of this HTML, any of this head, title, that's not going to be useful to us because we already know that from the challenge description that the lines of the poems don't have any of this in there. So let's go ahead and start filtering things out. So first of all, we just take that recommendation that was here. It's just going to trim any of the blank spaces before and after the text. So that's useful to do. Then we're just going to hit on that null there and say exclude to get rid of all those null values. They're not useful to us going forwards. And then this is kind of the point about all the HTML things. This is how you can kind of get rid of them. So we're saying if our download data is containing the greater than or the less than sign or the equal sign, then it's probably something to do with the JavaScript, the HTML, or the CSS. It's not going to be the poems that we want to be looking at. So we do that. We see that our first value here has a dash dash in front of the fair. So we just get rid of that by using a simple calculation to just sort of say replace the dash dash with nothing. So if we do that, then we move on to our next step because we can see this very first line is urchin tracker, which is unlikely to be a part of the poem. So how do we get rid of this? And also if we find it in our line here, we notice kind of if we're looking at the profile pane, then most of these lines are unique. There is one row for them. But we come down to the urchin tracker down here, and there are 5 rows. So that is appearing for every single one of our poems, as we can kind of see here. So we know this is something we need to get rid of. We could obviously just click on it and hit exclude, but how do we do it a bit more dynamically? So what we're going to do is we're going to use an LOD. So then for each line, we're counting the number of rows, so counting the row ID. And so we're just getting that value there. If I just zoom out again, then we're getting this value here. So we can see that for most of them we have a 1, we have 1 row for each of the lines, but for that urchin tracker we have 5. So we're going to want to just click on that and exclude it. Probably a better way to do that actually to make it more dynamic would be to, say that only keep the values where it's 1. Yeah, I went on to, I said let's be more dynamic and then I was less dynamic. So yeah, I would change that personally to be only keep the 1 rather than excluding the 5, just so that it's going to pick up any future possible problems. So we've done that, we've got rid of that urchin tracker, which is great. So now let's click on a poem and have a look at it. Once we've removed that, sorry. Now we can see that that's kind of looking semi-right, semi-good, except, oh, we're coming to this written in Germany. That doesn't seem like it's part of the poem, so that's a shame, a pest. But if we look at the row ID, we see that comes before the first line of our poem. So what we're going to do, basically the logic of how we're going to get rid of this rather than just clicking on it and excluding it, is we're going to say does our first line of the poem equal the poem title? And if it does, then that's going to be our number 1, and we'll go on from there. So first of all, we're going to number for each of the poems. We're just going to number the lines 1 to however many lines in the poem. So let's start that off. That's our rank 1 that we're creating here. So we're just, for each poem, rank on the row ID, because our row ID is kind of just our way of seeing that. I'm going to make this smaller again because that's where I made the download data go big. There we go. So now if I click on, for example, this top poem here, then it's more clear to us that that first line is not the title of the poem. So that's what we're trying to get rid of here. So we just rename this to be line number, our ranking that we've just created. We get rid of our row ID just because that's no longer useful for us. And when we're checking if our first line of our poem is equal to our poem title, then we're going to need to have this line field without any punctuation, and we're probably going to want to uppercase it just because that's probably the easiest way for us to double check between the poem and the line that they're correct. So we duplicate the field. We do a bit of removing the punctuation by, going to the 3 dots, cleaning, removing the punctuation, and we also make it uppercase. So we do those 2 things to it to get it looking like this. And then we create a calculation to say, is it the first line? So is the first line, basically, is our poem uppercasing the poem title, is that equal to the line? And then if we see our trues, we have 5 of them, which, there we go, those are all the first lines of the poem. And we can see that in 2 instances, that's correct, that's exactly as we want it to be. But in these 3 cases, we have something before our first line of our poem. So how do we get rid of those other fields, the written in Germany, etc., and so forth? So if we kind of think about this, then we're going to write a filter. So we want the first line to be true. We want to keep all those values. Or if that's not the case, or if the first line is false, then we only want to keep it if the line number isn't equal to 1. So that gets rid of the written in Germany. Anything that is number 1 that isn't equal to the title of the poem, then that gets rid of those 3 rows that we don't want. And we can see that we've gone from 109 rows there to 106 rows. And yeah, written in Germany has gone. So that's great. If we now click on this poem title, then yes, we got rid of the written in Germany, but we still have this issue where our line number is now off by 1. So we now need to clean up that numbering. So how do we do that? So we'll use a fixed LOD, and we'll say for each poem, give me the minimum line number. So that will tell us which ones don't have aren't starting from 1. And then we'll use this calculated field. So we'll say if our fixed LOD isn't equal to 1, so if it's not equal to 1, then that means that we need to minus 1 from every single number from our line number. Otherwise, just leave it as it is. And that's how we sort of do all that cleaning up so that we get to the stage where now we just have our poem, the line number and the line, and then this kind of cleaned up version of the line for doing some further analysis with. Because now what we need to do is split this out into individual words rather than lines. So let's just click here to see how we've done that. So we've gone to our line -1, the duplicate that we had. Not sure I can find it in here. Where has it gone? There it is, sorry, it's right at the start. And then we just want to split that out using a custom split. We'll split on the space and we'll split off all of them. So then if we do that, then that's how we get to all of the words split out. And that's all working nicely. We can see that it's all kind of flowing through there. Sorry, I've just realized that there's extra steps there where I've moved where I duplicated my line, but that's fine. That all still works. I'm just getting rid of them for the purpose of keeping everything clean. There we are. So that's that all split out. Now we just pivot it down using the wildcard pivot on the word split. Then to kind of keep the word order, we'll just split off the last digit of that split line. So going to the split names here and just saying, split the values, custom split, space to hit the last field. That gives us our word number. So I rename that to be word number. So that's just the ordering of the word in the line, which is useful to us. Then I don't need those pivot one names anymore. And I'm just renaming this, the sort of pivoted field to be word. And I'm also going to just calculate the length of that word because we're doing our scaffolding. So we're bringing in our scaffold where the length is greater than or equal to the scaffold value. And that just means that we are now able to split it out into letters. So if we just go ahead and do that, then we're using that classic kind of mid-word, the scaffold number, so the position in the word and only a length of 1 to split out into our letters. And then we're just bringing in our Scrabble data set, so joining letter to letter to get our scores, as you can see here. We are aggregating it, so we're grouping by the poem, by the line number, by the line, by the word number, and by the word, and we're just summing that score up. And then all that's left to do is to find out the highest number, the highest word per poem. And yep, you guessed it, that's just an LOD, where we're fixing on the poem, and we're taking the max score, and then we're just creating a calculated field, which is going to tell us true or false. So does the score equal the fixed LOD? And if it does, then that is our highest scoring word. So we'll see that we have 5 of those, and we can see what those scores are for each of the poems. So I hope that that was useful for you. I hope you found it a fun challenge because I certainly enjoyed creating it. So thank you for watching.